guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I'm here with my March wrap up. It is slightly belated March wrap up. I just haven't had the time to sit down and do this video yet, but all of the books that pretty much all of the books I'm talking about I have talked about in my reading vlogs for the Irish Readathon, which I will leave linked above if you haven't seen them. But yeah, this is just where I can talk about all of them at once. So I will get straight on into it. If you haven't watched those vlogs, if you're not so much interested in the vlogs, if you just want to hear my thoughts about all the books that I read during the Irish Readathon, this is the place for you. So the first book I read for the Irish Readathon I actually don't have in physical copy anymore, because as soon as I read it I actually gave it to my dad because I think he will really love it. It's called The Glass Ceiling by Eimear Ryan, and this is about Eimear Ryan, her relationship with sport as a woman in Ireland, and in particular the sport of Camogie, which is a form of which is a sport that is originally Irish. So if people have heard of Gaelic football and hurling, Camogie is hurling. It's just called Camogie when a woman plays it. So, and like she even gets into that, the fact that it's hurling but it's called Camogie when a woman plays it, so it's even given a different name, and there are some different rules even though at the core it is the same game as hurling. So she talks about her love of hurling growing up. She comes from a very GAA focused family, and all her family and a lot of the town that she's from, the county that she was from as well, is very focused on hurling as a sport. So she kind of lived and breathed it for a very long time. And then she kind of talks about as a teenager kind of how her relationship with sport changed a little bit, but then how kind of just through her life how sport was there for her in different formats, and some of her frustrations with the sport as well, and kind of the way it's kind of tried to move with the times, and in other ways how it is really kind of held back from joining kind of the more modern day in many ways with the sport. But I really enjoyed this. I thought there were some really great poignant bits in it, particularly that I think like really obviously very Irish focused, but also as like a woman in sport, as a woman who as a teenager as well, like growing up feeling a little bit more vulnerable in many ways maybe, or self-conscious in a way that you are as a teenager, and how sport can sometimes make you feel better about it, but at other times sometimes it can make you feel even more different in many ways. But I just really like this. I thought Eimear Ryan had a really lovely writing like voice, and I really just appreciated all the moments where she kind of laid herself out a little bit in this book and really like showed her vulnerable moments. And there is talk about like COVID and her relationship with sport during the pandemic as well, and in like a slightly aging body. She is in her late 30s now, I think. So for doing sport, particularly Camogie, which is quite a high contact sport, it is really hard on your body. And she kind of talks about that, the changes she has seen in her own body and in her own recovery from the time she was young to where she is now in her late 30s, and how it's just a little bit harder now to like get back up, or how she's a little bit more scared of going in for those tackles when she knows she could go down and have a hard time getting back up. So yeah, I just really enjoyed all this. I gave it a strong 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. And for anyone who's looking about a book about women in sport, but maybe particularly like an Irish book about women in sport, I think this is a really good place to start. The next book I read was A Maid on Fifth Avenue by Sinéad Crowley. This is a book that is set in 2 timelines. One of them is 2021, 2022, I think 2022, and then the other one is in the 1950s. We're following a woman in the more modern time period. She is Irish, but she is working in LA, kind of in, I think she does like kind of like TV or like advertising, kind of directorial screenwriting, something like that. And she has been suffering a lot from basically what's COVID burnout, and she goes back home to Ireland, and she ends up going to her parents' holiday home, and kind of go like trying to like just be there for a bit of respite, kind of get back into the swing of things, kind of figuring out what she wants to do next. Just basically taking a breather and really having kind of like a mental health break from everything is what she needs. And she kind of gets to know some of the locals a little bit better, some people who are her own age, and kind of a romance starts up from there as well. And then in the other timeline we are learning about a woman who grew up in this part of the country where our modern day heroine is, and she emigrates to New York, and we see her life in New York as a maid in New York, her friendship with this girl that then starts turning into something more, and then there is this kind of mystery about what happens to her. There is kind of a not a slight kind of crimey thrillery element to it, in terms of there is this kind of big bad character who kind of shows up a couple of times, who is really bad news, and we're seeing how this really affects everyone's lives, and how Annie's life, so this is the 1920s actually, not the 1950s, but Annie's life, basically her life in New York can change because of this, and we just see how things are happening back home which make her need to pause her life for a little bit and have to deal with things back home. This one was fine for me. I gave it like a 2.5 to 3 stars. I really liked kind of the elements of female friendship in it, particularly with Annie's timeline. She has a best friend who she will do anything for, but I also felt like this friendship was a real like it had a lot of negative connotations for Annie, particularly near the end of the novel, and I wasn't really happy with how things ended up with our main character because of that. I just found it slightly depressing. It just has kind of a trope in it that I can't really talk about because it would be a spoiler, but it has a trope in it that I just really don't like, because I always feel like the main characters like lose so much time, and it just really like annoys me, because I feel like if things had just gone different, maybe like I don't know, like someone's life could be completely different because of like one decision made by another person, or you know, just selfish actions and things like that. So yeah, this one was just, I found like a lot of the characters were kind of like vanilla and slightly boring, and I also found the modern timeline slightly defunct. I actually wasn't really sure why we really needed it. I don't think it really added anything big to the story in a way, and I felt like everything that was like revealed in the modern storyline was very, very obvious. So yeah, it felt a little bit, it felt sometimes like I didn't really think it needed to be there at all. So yeah, this is like a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Not my favorite read of the month at all. Then I read Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan, and this is a book I've been wanting to read for a really long time, so I'm really happy I finally got to it. In this one, we are based in London in the 1980s, and we are following a journalist who ends up coming across kind of accidentally this story of this missing girl on this estate, and it's turns from like kind of like a missing persons to a murder mystery or a murder case quite quickly when the body of this girl is found. And everyone starts talking about how the last time this little girl was seen, she was with another little girl who belonged to this Irish family who live on this estate, and people kind of look down upon this Irish family. They see them as like quite lower class, not, you know, a little bit trashy, and he ends up thinking, well, this could be like the story of a lifetime, this could be my big scoop, this could be the one that like gets my name, you know, in front pages. And he basically is working for like kind of a tabloidy type of newspaper, and he ends up kind of befriending this family and putting them up in a hotel and getting their stories, and we're just learning each of the member of this family about their story, about why they ended up in Ireland, or sorry, why they left Ireland and ended up in London, and what they think happened between the two girls that ended up with one of them dead. And we are just learning about this. It's all very like, it's gritty but not like super gritty, and dark but not super dark. I really liked just some of the conversations that were had in this about like motherhood, like being young, mistakes, like it's like everything. I felt like the title of this is so good because everything that's talked about in this book is very, very ordinary, and it's saying like how all these small things, like nothing big, but there's just these small decisions that can really like change or make the course of a person's life. And it doesn't have to be this one big decision, but just some of these small decisions that at the end of the day are these ordinary failings of someone like you know, failing to step up for themselves or to strive for themselves, but also people around them failing to help them at certain times, or failing to give them one more chance, or to look after them a little bit better. Just all these different ways in which people fail each other but also fail themselves. That happens every single day in the real world, and I just really love this. I thought it was really good, really strong. I don't think it will win the Women's Prize. I'm actually not sure if it got shortlisted. It got longlisted. I don't know if the shortlist is out yet. I don't think it will win, but I'm really glad the fact that it's longlisted will bring more people to Megan Nolan, because I think this book is really good. I think it has a particular voice to it, and I think she has a particular voice to her writing that's very good. Even though I did also read her other book, which I didn't like as much as this one. But yeah, I did really enjoy this one. I gave this one a really strong 4 out of 5 stars. One of my surprises of the month was Nora by Nuala O'Connor, and this is actually kind of the the story, kind of the story of James Joyce, but not James Joyce. We were actually following James Joyce's wife, Nora, from the time she meets James Joyce. They very quickly kind of shack up together, end up going off. They live together for years, have children before they ever even got married, but they lived outside of Ireland, mostly in Italy, and also in England for a while, and in Switzerland, I think. And we are just following basically James Joyce's career through the eyes of his wife Nora, who was always there for him, but was also the person who was more or less the victim of the times when he wasn't getting work, or he wasn't writing, or he was choosing his writing more like over his family in terms of like being able to look after them, food, rent, all those sorts of things. And the number one for him was his writing rather than his family. And at times, you know, his family were left in the dark really while he went and tried to strive for greatness with his writing, which obviously he did eventually achieve. This is like the first book that's ever actually made me want to read James Joyce, which is really funny. I was really kind of thrown off at the start of this because it does like start with quite explicit scenes between Nora and James Joyce. Their relationship did start out quite sexual, which is known, and I think there's very famous like letters between them that are very sexual in nature and very explicit, and we do get some of those in the book. And I do feel like at times like I was like, I don't really want to be reading this, but I did find their kind of like day-to-day, their ordinary life really interesting. I just do think it's really funny, or like I find it really interesting, this kind of like I don't know, whether it's a fly in the wall look at the inside look of a person who is great in society, whether it's in art or writing or something else, and seeing what they're like with their family and who it is that has been around them that has basically let them or helped them get to where they are, but how those people are sometimes the ones that are left behind in many ways, or are you know, do end up, you know, having to deal with some of the bad sides of everything. And we do definitely see that in this book. But I did really like Nora and James' relationship. Like, it was very strong until the end. They did very much love each other, even though I do think he did, you know, play around a little bit on the side, as far as I know from like history, and all, it's kind of like, you know, in this book as well. I found it really interesting. I never knew about their children, in particular their daughter, who ended up in like a mental asylum. She had really bad mental health issues, and it's just really sad what happened to her. And I think that Nuala O'Connor took a certain angle with that in terms of Nora's relationship with her daughter Lucia. And I think there's like some other people who say that like she was basically like locked away by her family. This doesn't really take that stance. It's more that like they couldn't do anything to help her, and they didn't know what to do with her for her own safety. So yeah, I'd be interested in, I do think there is actually a book out that's about like a fiction book about Lucia's life as well, and I think it would be interesting maybe to read that and get like kind of another angle of that story. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It was a 4 out of 5 stars as well. And yeah, it was a surprise for me because I listened to this in audiobook as well, and the audiobook was really, really good. But I just wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. But by the end, I was really, really enjoying it. So I do recommend. And the next book I read was Listen to the Land Speak by Manchán Magan. This is a non-fiction book, which is all about Ireland's land and how it is all connected to kind of Irish mythology and folklore, and kind of just like ancient Ireland, and just how deep Irish culture goes and Irish mythology goes when it comes to a lot of the land around us, and how you could be standing at a point where like you live, or like, you know, you're visiting, and there could be like really ancient connections to like different like landmarks or hills or mounds where you are, to like really, really ancient Ireland. And Monaghan kind of goes on a journey through Ireland to different points, kind of different caves and landmarks and things like that, and is talking about them from like bogs to fairy forts to different caves that he finds out that are connected to ancient goddesses. And I just felt like I learned so much that I never knew about Irish folklore in this book and mythology, and about like gods and goddesses that I'd never heard about before. And I really, really enjoyed that experience, and it made me really, really want to read a lot more, or learn a lot more about Irish folklore and mythology, because I never really like, I should have known, but I never actually realised how lacking my knowledge was until I was like reading this book, and I was learning so much more than I ever thought about. I do think this kind of meanders a little bit in the middle, but I kind of took this as kind of like a chapter by chapter basis rather than something that was like a flowing arc from start to finish. Like, it is nonfiction, and I think Manchán has just a way of writing and speaking, and it's just the way his mind works that sometimes he'll jump topics a little bit until he might talk about something else for a little while before he gets back to the topic that he started with. And it's just kind of the charm of him as a writer, and this novel and his other novels as well, or this, it's not a novel, this book. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and as I said, it made me feel very connected uh to the folklore of my country and to the history of my country, and for that I really loved it. So I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. A 5 out of 5 star reread for me was Normal People by Sally Rooney. I really enjoyed this reread, and I also actually watched the show while I was rereading this, and it made me realize what a perfect adaptation of the show, adaptation of the show is to the book. They just did everything so right, and I like, it's just like reignites my love for Paul Mescal all over again, which isn't hard to do, to be honest. But yeah, I really enjoyed watching that. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. I did say like the audiobook narrator is like good, but I was slightly thrown off at like the voice that was given to Connell, because I'm so used to hearing him or like picturing him as Paul Mescal, and the voice was like so different that I was a little bit like, oh god, like this isn't really the Connell that like I know in my head. But I did get into the swing of it very quickly, and yeah, I just really enjoyed rereading this. And it's been like, I think that last time I read this was 2018, I think 2017, so, or 2018 I think it was. So yeah, it had been a while since I'd read this. I just really enjoyed it. If you don't know what Normal People is, it is about basically a relationship between two Irish, we meet them as teenagers, Connell and Marianne. They go to school together, but they are in different kind of social hierarchies in the school, so they kind of keep their relationship a secret. And then we see them as they go into college, and their social status kind of switches, where Connell kind of becomes the one on the outside, and Marianne becomes a little bit more popular. And we see them as they grow up and are like, dealing with their college years and dealing with their relationship and kind of coming in and out of each other's lives, but how they are basically like each other's loves, like the love of each other's lives, but they just are kind of bad at communicating with each other. But at the same time, with this book, I feel like this is a book not for people who don't like miscommunication, but at the same time, I feel like they're bad at communicating with each other, but they're better at communicating with each other than they are with anyone else in their life, because they are the ones that actually probably understand each other the most out of everyone that they know. But sometimes they're just bad at actually really expressing their feelings, of being like, I really like you, I would like to stay here, or I would like to make this more than what it is. And then they're just like, things are like misconstrued, and like it's just like, yeah, and then they go off and then they come back together. It's just like a whole thing. But that's just basically what they are. I think there are some good points in this around mental health, anxiety, living in situations that aren't good for you, relationships that aren't good for you, and having people in your corner and in your life that you can talk to or turn to when you need them. And it's about a really good friendship, even more so than a love relationship. Even though there's times where they are not together, they are still always each other's friend and number one person in many ways. And I thought that was really lovely as well. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars, easy 5 out of 5 stars, and I really loved it. Then I read another 5-star read for me, and that was Long Island by Colm Tóíbín. This is the sequel to Brooklyn by Colm Tóíbín, which follows Eilish as she travels from Wexford, Ireland to New York in the 1950s. And we see in Brooklyn her meeting a young Italian-American boy and trying to figure out if this is the life for her now. She's looking back to Ireland, she's feeling very homesick, and she's trying to figure out where her home is. Is it in New York or is it in Ireland? And in this one, we are following Eilish as she is married. She is 20 years older. She's now in her 40s. She has children. And at the start of this book, something kind of shocking happens or is revealed to Eilish. And she ends up deciding to go home to Ireland for a while. She wants to like kind of see her mother. Her mother is in her late 80s now. And she basically wants to see her mother again, because she knows that if she doesn't go now, like when is the next time she could see her mother. And then when she gets to Ireland, she's also kind of reconnecting a little bit with her old friend Nancy, who we did see in Brooklyn, and also Jim, who was one of her old kind of former flames as well. And we're kind of seeing what happened to them in the last 20 years, how life has been treating them. We also see kind of like how Ireland has changed in many ways. Like I feel like there's a very big change in Ireland from like the 50s to the 70s in many ways. It was like really starting to progress a lot the way in the 70s, the way it wasn't in the 50s. But we kind of see how, yeah, like Eilish comes back and kind of, she's coming from obviously New York or Long Island in New York and coming back to Wexford and seeing the changes, but also seeing maybe how things stayed the same in many ways. And this is a very, very quiet novel. It's a very character focused novel. Not a lot happens in it. We're kind of just seeing them walking around their village or their town and thinking about things and having these like very small innocuous conversations with each other, and I just loved it. Like I feel like I could just follow Eilish forever. I think she's a fantastic character who I really, really love, and yeah, I genuinely would follow another book about what happens to her next after this. I feel like the ending of this is very similar to the ending in Brooklyn, where you're not really told a lot, but you kind of have to just figure it out for yourself. And I kind of like that with this book, because it kind of gives you, as a reader, maybe a little bit of power of deciding what Eilish did and what maybe she should do. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, this was a 5 out of 5 stars. Very gentle, lovely read. Really nice just to keep company for a while, and yeah, I loved it. After that, I read a picture book, which was The Girls Who Slayed Monsters by Ellen Ryan. This was a really lovely picture book that was just a short story about a bunch of different Irish goddesses and who they were, what they did, and kind of the significance behind their stories, and just loads of different connections to them. And it was like they were paired up with really, really beautiful illustrations of the goddesses that were just absolutely stunning. I would really recommend this picture book for anyone who is looking for, I think for like maybe children age 9 plus, maybe 8, 9, 10. I think it'd be really good up to 11, 12. Before maybe it gets a little bit like kiddish in some ways. I do think the stories, like I would have loved the story to have been longer. I would have loved like novels about each of these women and all of these goddesses. I thought like were really, really cool. I actually thought it was really cool as well that we saw goddesses who had connections to like different countries as well. So there was like a goddess who's also connected to Greece, another one who's also connected to Spain, and there was a goddess who was non-binary, and then there was also a goddess who which is Queen Maid of the Bullock Cool story, who is like connected to like menstruation and having her period, and like having her period is like a part of her story, which I thought was just like a really cool story to put in that's like obviously aimed at girls. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a like 3.5-ish stars, 4 stars. Obviously because I'm not the target audience, so like I would have liked it to have been longer. I would like the story to have been longer, but I think for its target audience, it would be a really, really good read. After that, I also finished an audiobook that was All Her Fault by Andrea Mara. This is also one that I really, really enjoyed. This is a 5 out of 5 stars for me. A really good kind of domestic suspense thriller. In this one, we are following a woman who is picking up her son, who's 4 years old, from a play date that was arranged with another parent. She's picking him up after school, and then when she gets to this house, not only is her son not there, but like it's not a house belonging to the parent who she thought her child was with. And when she ends up getting in contact with this mother, she's like, I never arranged a play date with you, like I don't know what you're talking about, I don't know where your son is, he's not with me, he's not with my son. And obviously an investigation ensues, like where is this boy? This boy is missing. No one knows who has taken him. His parents don't know where he is. None of the parents of the children in his classroom know where he is. None of them have him. And obviously like it's kind of panic stations both for the woman who is the mother of this child, but then also the woman who is also kind of implicated into this by the fact that her child was apparently supposed to be with her. We're kind of seeing both of their point of views and seeing how the two of them, the other one ends up being connected to the story a lot more than she thought she ever could be. And I just really enjoyed this. I thought it was just really I thought it was really well paced. I thought the kind of the story with the mothers and the them dealing with kind of all the pressures of being a mother, particularly like maybe like modern day working mother as well. I thought there were some really great like red herrings in this book, not really in your face, but just like, but subtle enough that after a while you'd be like, ooh, but then like, yeah, I just thought it was really, everything was just really well done in terms of this book. And yeah, just some of the twists and turns at the end were also really, really good. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this as an audiobook. It was one of those ones that I just like kept listening to because I wanted to find out what happened, and I gave it a strong 5 out of 5 stars, and I'll definitely be going on and reading more Andrea Mara. After that, I read a book that is ancient history paired with some fantastical elements, and that is The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless. This is set in ancient Ireland. We are looking at Viking Ireland, and we are following 2 different women. We are following a woman called Gormla, who is the mother of a Viking prince. She wants him to be king. She wants him to take over from his father, and to do that there are a couple of people in his way. But Gormla is also someone who something called a Fomorian, which is basically like this very ancient type of person who, or like this kind of ancient bloodline that runs through her. That means that she is very long living, and she also can have children who have this magical ability of this kind of fire ability that she has, though her son Cedric doesn't have this. He is just a mortal being. And she is also kind of the sworn enemy of the Tuatha Danann, which is kind of the old fairy folk of Ireland. And we are also following people who are derived from them, who are like, their kind of main mission in life is to get rid of all the Fomorians. And we are following a woman called Fola who is with them, and she is a healer. And she ends up getting tasked to infiltrate the camps of the High King, or just the king at this point in time, of Brian Boru, and trying to figure out what he is doing. And then the Brian Boru's kind of plans, army people end up coming in contact with Cedric, and then Fola and Gormla also kind of come into contact. We're kind of seeing their 2 stories kind of come closer and closer throughout the entire book, and the 2 of them are like really interesting women to follow. Fola is definitely kind of the more softer, peace-loving, like slightly innocent at times person, where Gormla is definitely very much, she reminded me a lot of Cersei from Game of Thrones. She's not necessarily like evil, but she's someone who is quite cunning, will do anything to get her son on the throne, to help her son, to get her way. She will do anything, and she will threaten who she wants. She will, potentially kill whoever is in the way, even if they are children. And yeah, she will threaten anyone's loved ones to get what she wants. And yeah, so she is very someone who is like a very kind of like morally grey character, but I kind of loved following her because you just can't trust her. You just don't know what she's going to do, and I think she'll be really interesting to follow in book 2, because I want to see what she does next, and how she deals with the situation she ends up in at the end of the first book. So yeah, I just really love this mix of ancient Ireland and Viking Ireland with Irish folklore and mythology again, a little bit of magic to kind of spice things up as well. And yeah, this was really good. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I'll definitely be reading the next one. Then the second last book I read in March was Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan. This is Megan Nolan's debut novel, and I listened to this in an audiobook. We are following a unnamed character who is talking about her relationship with a man called Kieran, and we find out very quickly that this relationship wasn't particularly a good relationship. It was a very, very toxic relationship for both of them. But we find it was kind of like he was very emotionally manipulative and controlling in many ways, and she kind of let this relationship and this man become everything in her life, and it was just really, really unhealthy. And she is kind of looking back and talking about it and seeing from like the start to the finish, and all the ups and downs that she went through with this man, what she was going through in her personal life at the time as well, and talking about herself, her childhood, her growing up, and a lot of like the issues that she has and still has. And there's a big emphasis on kind of like eating disorders and body image in this, so I would give a trigger warning for that, and also just like sexual assault too, and just general misogyny as well. This was fine for me. I didn't love it, and it's mostly because I just really didn't connect with the main character who we're following. I thought, while I definitely empathized for her situation being in this relationship, it felt like it didn't necessarily feel like she was trapped in this relationship. I wouldn't say she was trapped in the relationship in terms of like that he wouldn't let her leave. It definitely wasn't that. She even went at the point where she was kind of like done with the relationship, she stayed in it for like some reason, and then she did a lot of things wrong in terms of like being with other people. That was just kind of hard to like read, when it's just like, well, you can just leave, like just leave. Like it was just one of those things. It was hard to figure out. Like I didn't really like her. Like I didn't really connect to her. I thought a lot of her actions, like obviously the man's actions in the relationship obviously were terrible. He wasn't a nice person at all. I couldn't really figure out what she found attractive about him. He was an asshole. But also I think she came across really badly in the book as well. The character came across really badly. Her actions were really, really poor at times, and she put herself into situations at times that were very, very avoidable. So yeah, I just kind of found it hard to connect with her, and because of that I found the story kind of just like really depressing at times. It just was hard to kind of keep reading at times, because you're like, well, this person is like just in this like ever revolving circle of like shit things, a shit relationship, like a circle of depression almost. And yeah, it was kind of hard to read at times. I wasn't totally enjoying it. There was a really funny Goodreads review of this, which is like, Megan Nolan said, let's take a Sally Rooney character and make her worse. And this is like a really good description of what the character in this is like. Like she's literally like all the worst parts of a Sally Rooney character, but like literally made worse. And that is exactly what it is. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. Not my favourite, but I did like her second novel better. So I will continue to read Megan Nolan, because I could see in many ways how her writing has improved in a lot of ways in Ordinary Human Failings. So I am very excited to see what she brings out next. And then my last book of the month was my reread for the group read, and that was The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. Won't talk about this too much because I talked a lot about this last year. It was my favourite book of last year. We're following Rachel, who is in her early 20s. She is in her last year university in Cork, and we see her as she meets James, who becomes her best friend. The two of them move in together, and they also end up kind of acting on Rachel's crush of one of her professors, and we see how this professor ends up in Rachel's life, and how basically like changes the course of all their lives, and all the ups and downs of what being a person in their 20s, in their last year of college, and then that time after college where you have no idea what you're going to do in your life, what that entails. I think this is really, really good at like bringing to life that kind of like that time period in your life of like being in your early 20s, not knowing what the hell you're going to do, not having any responsibilities, really being free to be as messy and as crazy and as salacious as you want in many ways. And I just love this. I think Rachel's a fantastic character. I love her friendship with James. I love the romantic relationships in this as well. The ups and downs of all of them. I really love the fact that we are following the story from an older Rachel who is in her 30s and pregnant with her first child, is married, is like very much settled down, and she's looking at this really chaotic point in her life and wondering like, what the hell, like, you know, and kind of looking back and saying like, well, what I know now, this person was saying this, but at the time I interpreted it as something completely different. And I really just liked that kind of older point of view of that, like looking at yourself and seeing the way you failed to communicate maybe well, or failed to understand other people from their point of views as well. And I just really enjoyed that. Yeah, so I absolutely love this. This was another 5 out of 5 stars for me. Really easy read. Definitely one I'll be continuing to reread a lot in the future. Yeah, just a lot of fun, and I love it. So those are all the books I read in March. Please let me know if you guys joined in on the Irish Readathon, what you guys read, what was your favourite book of the month. I would love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.